Carney government has tabled their bail reform bill. It is one of their most anticipated pieces of legislation this sitting. It aims to bring in harsher sentences and make bail harder to get amid growing concern among Canadians about a lack of safety in their neighborhoods. Sean Fraser is the Justice Minister. He joins me live in studio now. A pleasure to welcome you here. Thanks so much for making the time.
Thanks for having me.
I do want to ask you about the news of the day with Donald Trump in just a moment, but let's start with the bail reform because this is a top concern for residents here in the GTA. And I do not want to diminish some of the high-profile, horrific cases that we have been seeing and that have residents here in the GTA on edge. But if we do look at Stats Canada's crime severity index, crime has been trending downwards in the past several years, overall down 4% in the past year. We also don't have hard data that exists that shows, just how many people who are released on bail go on to recommit crimes, which I imagine is going to be a key part of evidence in any court challenges. And so I'm wondering why your government is introducing these measures now.
Sure. Look, thanks very much. And there's a lot to unpack in the question. But the starting point in this analysis is that we've heard loud and clear from Canadians that the justice system hasn't kept up with their lived reality. People here in Ontario included have seen a slew of home invasions, of auto thefts, and violent crime that has people not necessarily feeling safe in their neighborhoods. We undertook an extensive series of engagements with law enforcement, with provincial governments, the people who work within the system and the people who manage the system, to understand what more we can do to keep communities safe. We have, as you pointed out, seen a downward trend in the last full year that we have statistics, but this follows several years of increasing crime across Canada. When we hear from the police that they are frustrated with the same people that they are arresting who are committing crimes time and time again after being released, and we see people receiving sentences that aren't necessarily proportionate to the severity of the crime that they commit, particularly with violent and serious repeat offenders, we know that we have to take action. The reforms that we put in place are part of a broader strategy that's going to have tougher penalties for serious crime, but it also is going to have more support on the front line and more investments upstream in things like affordable housing, mental health and addictions, and supports for at-risk youth.
This is your government's third crack at bail reform in the last 7 years. Is that an admission then, essentially, that I'm hearing that you got it wrong?
Look, I take frankly, a different view, but I think there is actions we could have taken. Perhaps we should have done it at a previous point, but it's never the wrong time to do the right thing. My own view is that the legislation that we're putting in place now is going to have a positive impact on a go-forward basis. But we need to be honest with ourselves and with Canadians. If these laws have a positive impact, that's wonderful. If we learn from the implementation of these laws, there's other things that we need to take action on. We should be willing to do that as well. When you're dealing with something like the criminal justice system or with federal laws more broadly, you need to continue to respond to the reality that you see on the ground. And the reality that we are experiencing, that we are hearing from Canadians about, is that people want to ensure that their communities are safe, and they think changes to Canada's criminal laws will help deliver that public safety.
But when crime was actually on the rise a few years ago, Justice ministers within the Liberal government were saying the bail laws were fine. They were saying Bill C-75, the principle of restraint, needed to be respected. Why should Canadians believe you now when crime is actually trending downward, that this is actually about crime and not about politics, not about putting the Conservatives, who won seats on the basis of law and order, on their back foot?
Certainly. So first of all, on the principle of restraint, that's something that comes from the Supreme Court of Canada. It was codified, but I have heard from the conversations I've had with law enforcement, with people who are working within the justice system, that there are certain instances where that principle is being misapplied. We are adjusting the language in the criminal code significantly to say that bail hearings are not a get-out-of-jail-free card. They don't mandate a person's release. If the decision maker, a judge or a justice of the peace, cannot be confident that a person being released won't jeopardize public safety, then we're making clear that they have grounds to detain that person.
I understand that you're trying not to run afoul of the Supreme Court of Canada, but, if you are listening to community who has been saying for years that they feel that the principle of restraint is actually what leads to lenient bail laws in this country, why not just remove the explicit, mention of the principle from the criminal code?
This is a really important question. Removing reference to the principle of restraint from the criminal code won't eliminate it from Canadian law. When the Supreme Court made a decision, that became the law of Canada. The impact that we wish to have is to say, if that's the principle that exists at law, let's provide clarifying language so it's actually applied in the appropriate way. by clarifying that it is not a get-out-of-jail-free card, that you have grounds to detain a person if you don't believe you can manage the public safety outcome. We believe that the justice system is going to, in more instances, detain someone who would otherwise jeopardize public safety. We need to continue to respond to how things are playing out in the real world, and if we were simply to remove it from the code altogether, I don't think you'd see a meaningful difference between how the law is being applied today and how it would be applied after that change. The clarifying language you put in place, I have more confidence will lead to fairer outcomes and a greater degree of public safety.
I'm already over time, but I need to ask you very quickly whether you think trade talks with the U.S. Can be salvaged at this point.
Look, we want to remain at the table. One of the things that I have faith in is that the economy is made up not only of political leaders, but of players in the industry, of businesses who want to do cross-border business because they believe it serves their interests, it allows them to make money, to pay workers fairly, and to grow their local economies. When it's in the interests of both Canada and the United States to continue to work together to ensure that our economies can create opportunities for Canadians and Americans, I think we have a duty to our fellow citizens in both sides of the border to continue to work towards a good outcome for both countries.
Okay, Justice Minister Sean Fraser, really appreciate you taking the time for the conversation this morning. Thanks so much.